Hello, good morning, good afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is currently for you. I hope you are ready for this because I was doing my pre-live stream checkup of all of the things and the camera is picking up the colors on my jacket as intensely vivid. I hope it's going to be alright. So I have stolen Spouse's jacket and I'm feeling very fabulous indeed. It's one of those, I want to say, from those tacky booths all over outdoor spaces, that this one is over 10 years old, I'm pretty sure, from one of the booths in, was it Camden in London? But anyway, has been cold in Norway ever since a very warm spring, so I am stealing Spouse's clothes as is tradition. So hello everyone, welcome. It's nice to see everyone. I am back doing my jeans because they are falling apart, and I don't know if you can see this, but the pocket where the phone is has gotten this very torn area where the only thing still left standing is the elastane, the rest is torn, so we're gonna be patching that. Love the jacket? Yes! Yeah, my spouse bought this. We talked about it, they think it's like 10 years old when we were living in London, and it's super warm and it's cold outside, so why not? Vivid colors look natural when it's a rainbow, that's good. And it isn't the entire screen, so I'm hoping it isn't overwhelming for anyone. But it feels like a good time to be wearing nice warm jackets in rainbow colors. Let's see. Still trying to come up with something to do while you watch. Well, there's always something to do, isn't there? I like getting progress on some of the darning and mending because I can do it while I talk to you, although the knit has been going alright. It's good to see me in colors, only because it's fun to be unusual once in a while, yeah. I do like the muted colors, don't I? I feel that is something that I used to be one of the black-dressed kids when I was younger. I wasn't cool enough to be goth because I didn't have enough money, but I tried to keep a very black wardrobe and did that for many years, and now I've reverted to muted, desaturated, anything really that is just comfortable, because if people are gonna throw clothes away, I am gonna use it, and I'm gonna take them and I'm gonna wear them until they fall apart, and that is easier when you don't mind a lot of different colors. Darning it shall be. I have at least 2 pairs of socks in need of darning and some other stuff as well. That sounds like a most excellent choice. This too is, I know it's frustrating when you're darning something and as soon as you finish something it feels like something else pops up, but at least we have company, don't we? This is work that I find is so much easier to do when you're watching something or have someone to talk to or listening to something. Whereas for other crafts I need to be quiet because I can't focus if something else is going on and it's too complicated. What kind of... Do you have any crafts that are like that, where you just can't listen to anyone else or do anything else? And concurrently, do you have any crafts where you can do anything because the muscle memory is so strong? I was just rewatching the latest stream while altering a client's pants, widening the waist measurement by 12 centimeters. Please send good vibes, everyone. Good vibes going your way. I have changed the waistband of pants a couple of times, and it's always a lot of work, especially when there are belt hoops and other stuff involved in the whole thing. So you can do it. We believe in you. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. If I have to change the waistband of trousers, I'm always tempted to, take shortcuts and just sew a little triangular piece. It always gets chunky and, it's not the most comfortable, but at least it gets done fast. I don't have to re-stitch and fix and do all of the belt loops and all of the things. But when you're doing it for a client, I'm guessing they need to do it properly, so then it's going to take a little bit of time, eh? But what are everyone else working on? I saw some, was it handkerchiefs, Susan, that you were working? Yeah, handmade doilies that no one wanted and make them into a top. You have so many creative projects. I love it. I love to see so many reuse and creativity and making use of what we have projects, which I also should be doing more of that. I mean, I'm guilty, a good stack of fabrics, especially from the closing down sale that I found a couple of months back. But we are also getting a good stack of tablecloths and bedclothes and various things that definitely should be made into something else. But also sometimes helping someone with their stash can lead to small cuts of fabrics, like fat quarters and things meant for quilting, or short cuts of colorful prints and fun stuff. And I was visiting a friend and we had a little marathon sewing session where we took a lot of, like, I don't know how big that would be in inches, but like 50 centimeters, half a meter of various quilting fabrics in vivid fun colors and prints. And my friend had just inherited, or like they bought from someone who was destashing for very, very cheap, a lot of these fabrics, like a whole box full. And we sat down and we pulled out a couple of them and we just sewed a lot of cloth bags with drawstrings for storing projects, or buying things, or sorting things when you're packing, or laundry bags, or what have you. Not for in the washing machine, but for like separating things when you're traveling. And it's so nice to just sort of get some things out of the fabric stash and into use and being things that you actually want to use and find useful, because it's so easy to reach for a used shopping bag or something, isn't it? But cloth bags are so enjoyable and so pretty. Violet Maze is punch needling some flowers. That sounds exciting. I have no experience doing punch needlework, so that sounds really cool. I love to see people doing crafts that I'm not familiar with, because there's so much craft variety. I'm all about rescuing things from the trash that are beautiful and can be made into a second life. That's the thing, isn't it? These things used to be valued a lot more than they are now, but that doesn't mean that we can't use them. And if they're going in the trash anyway, why not remake them into something else? I love that kind of thinking. It's so nice. Howdy, Haley. Welcome. We are having a slow Thursday. It is still Thursday. Yes, slow Thursday. It's been a week, so I'm a little bit frazzled. I haven't gotten as much work done this week as I have wanted to. So sometimes it's very nice. You know how when your brain isn't really cooperating with you and you try to push yourself, like if you're studying, to study like longer than you should, and then you don't end up getting anything more done, you just get more tired. This week has kind of been like that, where I haven't been able to focus on editing and have been sort of working overtime and still not getting anything done, because then you're exhausted on top of your brain running in all of which direction and all of the thoughts. So sitting down And having this scheduled to just chat with you and to sit down and darn and chill has been very good, because then I couldn't work far into the evening or try to work far into the evening and drag myself into the ground. So it's a nice reminder for me as well to take a little bit of a break and to breathe. I have to make a little case to transport my double-pointed knitting needles when on the go, and we'll use some old jeans as the fabric. That is cool. I've seen some of the quilted ones, and they're really cute. I also once, some of you have seen my darning mushroom with the screw top cap. Super cute. Okay, let's see if I can find it. It should be in here. I should make this into a cloth bag too, shouldn't I? This is old Envirosac that is most certainly polyester or something like that, because you use it many times, and I should remake cloth. But yeah, this little darning mushroom, maybe you should see it a little bit closer, is super cute. It's made by a pensioner. I found it on one of the secondhand resale. It has a screw so that you can store your needles inside. Super clever, super underpriced when I found it. He was just enjoying retirement and making things like these. And I actually got, because he was giving people extra gifts with it. It was so sweet. So he gave me this, which is also a needle house, super tiny and cute, and you just pop the lid open and there's your needles inside. But he gave me the option of 2 gifts, which is insane. This man was so sweet and charging far too little for his work. And the other thing was a double-pointed needle minder that had 2 hooks, no wait, 2 wound out. Are you gonna come upstairs, madam? Hello. That had 2 sort of caps on either end, and I think it was an elastic, or was it a string that you can tighten? And then you would stack all your 5 double-pointed needles, or however many you had, between them, and the elastic, or whatever it was, would hold them together, and keeping it that way. So I like the different designs that I see for that, and they're really cute. We're gonna have ads in just a second. And I might forget to say this, but we pause for ads, so if you get ads, don't worry. We take a little break, I drink some water, snuggle the cat. You don't miss any content if you get ads. It's alright. I try to make sure that you don't lose out on stuff. When Snugglebugs want attention. Luckily, from what I'm seeing, people report back, you usually get very short ads, so hopefully people don't get many ads in one go. Haley says, I'm out getting a bagel and some coffee with my dog. No crafting for me today. Oh no, one of those days. At least we can keep you company for a little while. And it's cute too. Oh, that mushroom is amazing. Yeah, it's super, super cool. I haven't seen their ad in a while though on that secondhand slash resale slash making. Like, people just use it to sell or give away stuff, be it secondhand or things they have made themselves and want to sell. But I'm wondering if they didn't get completely overloaded with orders, because A, they were super underpriced, super cheap. I tried to pay more and he refused. And he was getting more orders that he could handle as, you know, a freshly minted pensioner just enjoying life and trying woodworking. So I hope he's doing well. Maybe it was just a little bit too good to be true. But I hope he still enjoys woodworking, whether he kept selling things or not, or whether he started doing it just for friends and family. Are you in a snuggling mood? I should mount a lav mic on you so they can hear you purring. Because your purrs are so quiet. People need to be really close in order to hear it. They are plentiful. Hello, crafty pals. Hello, stripy crayons. We are indeed having a very chill start. I was starting my trousers, but someone was demanding my attention, as you do. As one does when one is so fabulous. Of course, we're gonna give attention where attention is due. Especially those chin scritches. She's such a sweetie. But it can be a real personality or a bit of a shock for guests, because if they have seen my content, which I don't usually, I don't try to spread my content with my friends, and yet they seem to have, most of them have found it anyway, so that's how it goes, I suppose. But there you go. But some of them are a bit surprised when they see Soot being all snuggly and affectionate on screen, all purring and chill and calm. But if they come over, she's instantly under a couch or up on top of a wardrobe or something else. She was spouse got her right before the pandemic. We adopted her from a colony that had been trapped and brought to the animal rescue. I think they trapped them in July, but so it was still too young. It was a litter of kittens that she came from, and spouse had to wait until August until the kittens were 12 weeks old until we could pick her up and bring her home. Now they raised the rules in Norway to 14 weeks. Like a kitten should be 14 weeks before they're separated from their litter and their mother, which we support. Good, healthy relationships in cats. And then the pandemic hit right after, so there were no doorbells, no guests, no nothing, and that was just Soot's normal for so many years. So still, it takes her a long time to warm up to strangers. There are some of our friends that come regularly enough that she pops out of her hiding place in not too long, but if it's someone she's never interacted with before, she is very shy little beastie. Although I will say we have had some guests who were so quiet and sat so still in the couch just crafting that she came out on the first visit, but it's always the quiet ones. Yeah, we're talking about you, because you are so fabulous. See, where did my needle go? She sounds like me. I know, right? It's very relatable behavior. I too would do this. If it was people I was unfamiliar with visiting our house, I would just hide in my room, especially if you're overwhelmed or tired. Just be like, no, not here. Sometimes I even do that if spouse is having friends over and I'm just super tired or overwhelmed, and they're having maybe a D&D session or a writing group meeting or something like that. And again, it's not my group, so it also feels a little bit weird. Like, are you supposed to hang out with them, but you're not playing D&D with them? Should I craft in a corner and listen in on all they're talking about? Same with when spouse is doing writing group stuff. It's, it's a little bit awkward to even be home at all. But usually I just hide in my workroom and work on some stuff with my thermos of tea, so I don't have to pop into the kitchen and walk past them and interrupt them, because I figure it's a little bit awkward for them too. So it seems to usually be all right. Yeah, it was really difficult after the pandemic restrictions to get used to a lot of people again. I am still not used to people the way I could tolerate them before the restrictions. I mean, I was always introverted, but yeah, It's just, and now that we currently we live rurally, so I don't see big crowds of people very often. So it's getting even worse. I'll have to practice, the old earbuds and errands in the city, because I am getting out of practice, and it's just, yeah, big crowds can be overwhelming. It's always such an honor to get a cautious sniff from a shy cat. I know, right? It's worth being shy and quiet and introverted if it means that you make friends with all of the cats when you go visit new people. It's always such an honor to meet a cat who is initially a bit cautious but warms up to you while you're there. It's the best. I find in winter wearing wool skirts really help, because a lot of cats really enjoy the wool. I agree, my social skills are non-existent at this point. Can relate. They were always a bit choppy. Cue the autism, but I don't know. In some ways, I feel like they are getting better. I mean, that was something that I did as a teenager. I would watch movies with friends and I would ask questions like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why did they react in this way? And as I sort of leveled up, I would start to ask more nuanced questions like, is person X doing this to person B because of this and this? And then, more socially minded friends could be like yes or no, and I would learn a lot that way. It's very helpful. And I also learned a lot from when I worked in university and, having colleagues in a professional setting. It's a cultural shock when no one in your family has ever gone to university, and there are a lot of unwritten rules in academia and they don't realize they're there if you ask them about them, but they will sure react if you cross any of them, and those were challenging. And I still don't think I have all of them. It's I still overstepped more than once without realizing it, and that can be really hard. It didn't used to be that people would talk about first generation academic stuff. I see more about it now, but it's still something that a lot of people aren't really aware about, that there are a lot of barriers, not just financially, but just fitting in the first place, and the good old not really fitting in with your working class peers anymore, but also not really fitting in with the academics because you're neither. And that can be hard when you sort of feel like what we in Norway would say, like you fall between two chairs when you're not one or the other. I always find the cat goes to the one person in the room that doesn't care, but not the ones that wants to meet them. Yeah, so if you can emulate that and try to ignore them and not look at them, that will often help. Working remotely since the pandemic has really allowed me to lean into my introversion. I'm not shy, I simply prefer my company to the company of most people. I can relate to that heavily. When the lockdown first happened, I had almost finished all of my teaching requirements. We'd done all of the lab work for my PhD, so I just had the writing left to do. So they sent me home straight away because I could do all the writing from home. I had all the data, I had remote access, it was not a problem, and just finished the last year at home, which was the most productive year I have ever done. But there were a few master students who I had analyzed their samples, and we had the data, but I hadn't yet taught them how to convert the data into concentrations, as it were, because if you know, a lot of analytical methods will give you a response, an electrical signal out, and then you need to sort of turn what we would call in chromatography a chromatographic peak, that is the concentration of your chemicals, and you need to calculates the area of the peaks, which software will do for you. You don't have to do it by hand, luckily. And then you have to take that and turn that by some formulas into actual, nanograms per liter or whatever concentration you're looking for. But they were very stressed, the poor things. But we were able to, with some remote Zoom stuff and some email back and forth, some very long emails. Some of them were, 2-page long questions. But we managed to get them through in the end, and they managed to deliver their master's thesis. So all's well that ends well. Rain. Good morning. But it also gave me an opportunity, let's see, Haley, to unmask in ways I don't think I ever truly had the ability to do before when I was constantly around others. Word. So now when I socialize with people, I'm a lot weirder, but I also in a way more comfortable and confident in myself because I've had a lot of time to be unmasked. I feel that so hard, and it's good when you're just allowed to be yourself, like with friends, but if I had to apply for jobs and go back into a professional office setting because YouTube wasn't paying the bills, I think I would struggle a lot more than I did before because, yeah, I'm a lot more unmasked or, less prone to, like, yeah, I'm weirder. It's a good way of putting it. Are you hearing this rain? Because it just was one of those sudden rainstorms, which are so common in summer, at least around here. Which I always thought was very fun as a child, because summer rain is not cold, is it? It's still warm and nice outside. You don't get as cold as when it's autumn and really chilly. Reading is useful for learning about people's behavior and social life too. It may even have the explanations included. That is a good point. I did do a lot of reading, but I also found that the movies and talking to friends who helped contextualize things was also really helpful. So I would do both, and I found that to be very nice. In German, the saying is sitting between chairs for not quite fitting in. Oh yeah, so you have a similar one. That is interesting. Yeah, because the Norwegian falling between two chairs is also applied to work settings, or if there's anything to do with, social security, or like if you don't fit, like in a hospital, if you have a medical condition that doesn't quite fit in this department and doesn't quite fit in this department, like they don't know where to put you, what to do with you. So they're just like, yeah, you're just falling between two chairs. And sometimes people also don't get the treatment they need because they get forgotten for similar reasons, or their caseworker relocated or got a different job or something, and people get forgotten, which is really not good. But yeah, I had someone I know last year managed to find flesh-eating bacteria, which if you're like, it's a very severe infection if it's left untreated for too long. Almost hit the organs, but didn't get that far. And that was the problem. Like after they left intensive care and was stable enough to be in one of the regular, it's not institutes or departments in the hospital. It's called something else. I can't remember. But the different places in the hospital. And they didn't know where to put them, because where do you put people with massive organ failure from flesh-eating bacteria infection? It's weird. And they ended up putting them in orthopedic, which this was not bone related, like they hadn't broken any bones, but they didn't really know where else to put them. So there's space here, let's just put them over here. We do what we can, I followed my father's footsteps in medicine. He came from a working family, and I never understood why they treated him so till I also graduated med schools. My siblings have not completed university, and they love to remind me of how smart I am. Oh, that can be difficult. Yeah, my family does not do that, but none of them. It's not even about completed university. None of them started. They're all blue-collar, excellent workers. Excellent, I will absolutely, we need so many more blue-collar and laborers than we need the high-end academics to do the plumbing and take the trash and build the buildings that we work in and the labs and all of the things. and there's always a room for both. But it can be challenging when it's difficult to talk about things that you care about because your contexts are different, and yeah, it can be a challenging situation because you feel alienated in both camps, and then where do you belong? Where do you fit in? So, but hopefully we find some friends who can give us a little bit of that both sides of the coin and give us that social belonging that we need. I thought it was a low fish tank bubbling in the background. I have no fish, but I do have a heavy rain. So the microphone did pick up on it. Interesting. And we're about to have some more ads. Which means I should drink my tea, which is probably getting cold. Oh, that is lovely. Oops. A friend of mine have a child, a toddler now, and someone taught them that after they would sit and enjoy their cup of tea, the toddler would watch, and the person would, drink the tea and then go, ah. So for a couple of months, this toddler, every time they took a sip of anything, they would go, and it was the most adorable thing I think I have ever seen. It was fantastic. They eventually grew out of it, but it was super, super cute while it went on. Out of curiosity, what aspects of textile history are your favorite to research? I love learning about lace textiles and plant fibers. Ooh, I love learning about that too. I really love, because of my chemistry background, when there is something intriguing about the chemistry of something, such as when I did the plant dyeing video about how some plant dyes work chemically, because that was, or on a molecular level, because that was specifically the question that person asked. I was like, let's get into this. This is so cool. And when complex things get figured out by people in the past, not necessarily, they don't understand how it works, they just know that it works, and looking at dye, steps like indigo, where you have to first reduce the compound and then dye the thing, and then it oxidizes again, and you use stale urine, or maybe in some of the Chinese villages they don't use urine, they also use lime, like slaked lime and things like that. And how did they come up with all of these steps, similar to some of the really intricate cooking processes that people in the past have figured out? Like they take something that is poisonous in its raw form and then they process this in 5 different steps, and now you can eat it. And I'm like, and then we figure out how it actually works, and it's just even cooler than it was. It was already cool for working in the first place, but when you realize the intricate, details to exactly why, sort of the randomness of why things works, just makes it even cooler to think about. In uni, I did a course in cellular microbiology, I think it was called, and biochemistry, which is all about, biochemistry especially was all about, memorizing. I'm gonna probably trigger a lot of people with things from exams, but the citrus acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, we were told up front that you're gonna get at least one of these 4 cycles to just draw out the entire thing on your exams, so you better learn them. And I remembered thinking, because I had a friend who, when I was talking about northern lights, they stopped me and told me that by explaining it I would ruin the magic. And I never understood that thinking, because to me, learning how intricate something is and how small the margins are for something to work and how complex it is and how much it takes for a system like our bodies that a lot of the time we just take for granted. I mean, the cells just do their thing, gene expression and everything, it just kind of happens. It just makes it even more magic and even more cool. So yeah, I think when I get to find those tidbits where textile history can be explained with chemistry and science, and I really get to dive deep on some topics and dig out some obscure research article from 1970 because no one cares about this stuff and no one researches it, and bring it to the forefront is just yes, absolutely yes. I'm well behind. I love how I accidentally find a ton of autistic YouTubers. It's comforting seeing how there are so many people like me who not only have similar experiences but also enjoy similar things. Well, hello, welcome. It is something that really helped me when I was in my mid-20s when I got the diagnosis. So still late diagnosed, but it, helped. Because I was always worrying as a teenager. I could see that I was different, as much as adults try to tell you that, you're not different, everyone feels that way, and you're like, there's something else going on here though, isn't there? And then I got the diagnosis, and it was like my brain kind of calmed down. I didn't have to ask myself so much, why was I different? Why was I, because this is usually how it goes, you turn it in on yourself, why was I broken? Why couldn't I understand other people? Why couldn't I just behave like normal people and have the same priorities, just have a standard, life? Why was I struggling with these things that people didn't seem to struggle with? And I mean, I still feel when I'm being overwhelmed and having a bad day that I am in some ways broken, but it's a quieter voice now, like having had time to understand that a lot of it is just brain chemistry that works a little bit differently, like the old stereotypical trope, it's just a different operating system, which has been really helpful in that old learning about yourself, accepting yourself, trying to design a life and habits and work and everything that actually fits your brain type and doesn't fight against it, which is, at the end of the day, that is what we want, isn't it? To be productive and to be active participants and valuable members of society without going against our own selves, so that we can do the best work that we can. Just looking at my iPad after dinner, and there you are, watching with a glass of red wine. Hello. Welcome, we are having a good time. Shayla agrees with the autism. Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing more content creators focusing on things which I enjoy. And some, like, in the beginning there was a lot of autistic YouTubers, activists, who their content was about autism, which is really cool and really necessary, but it's also nice to just see someone just existing with their autism and different hobbies and just doing other things as well, isn't it? Just seeing people out and about and doing their life and having a good time. Susan says, I'm a little behind because I'm trying not to dye myself blue at this point, but I wanted to say I'd rather spend a week with antisocial cats than people. I have 2 snuggly boy kitties, also voids. That is so sweet. They're matching. Both our voids are girl voids, which wasn't intentional, but they are super sweet. They are such cute little snuggle bugs. We adore them a lot. They're very, very nice. Talking about masking, I'm getting ready to get my hair cut, and that activity requires heavy masking, but I have to endure it so I stop feeling my hair touching my skin. Oh, that does sound like a situation that requires some mental preparation. I gave up on that whole thing. I started cutting my own hair when I moved out for university, and before that I just let my hair grow a lot of the time. I don't think I cut my hair. Maybe once or twice while I was a teenager. But when I moved for uni, I was just like, haircuts are expensive. I don't have a lot of money, so I'm just gonna lean my hair over the sink and cut it myself. And I've done that since because it works. At least for me in having long hair. But yeah, I can see how that would be a sensory thing that requires some mental fortitude and preparation. Love hearing about indigo dye? Yes, it's so cool. It's the things that get cooler the more you learn about them are just, so awesome. Learning science has never ruined the magic for me. I feel that it helps us understand this magic so much better. Exactly, that is exactly what I feel too. The understanding just makes it even cooler, because how did all of these things, these random or sort of chance things, manage to get together in a row like this and become this awesome thing? It's just super, super cool. And sympathies, I feel you. I hate when people touch my hair. The sounds of the machine, especially the buzzing sounds of shavers near my ear. Yeah, that can be really, and against your head too. Like, yeah. I hope you do well and that it's gonna be alright. That you can do the thing, and maybe, you know, have some you time and some break time after. Catch you at the rewatch? Yeah. Good luck. Take care of yourself. Gotta go to work? Have a good day at work. We will hang out here and you can always come back at a later point if that is alright. Yeah, this is what I mean by the sudden rainstorms. It's already stopped. It's so heavy and then it's just done. But you don't want to be caught outside in one unless you have an umbrella, then it's just a lot of fun. I'm getting better at drinking most of my tea without it being completely stone cold. Alright, we have secured the area. Shall we apply a patch as well? Yes, I think we shall, just because that corner where your trousers get worn outside of the pocket where you're putting your phone is always a high wear area that wears down after a while. Let's see, where is the trouser leg I've already cut from? These are, if you haven't seen them before, these are my sacrificial jeans. A pair of jeans that got repaired to the point where I was like, you cannot be repaired no more because that is too much work. So now they become the jeans that I cut into when I need a patch for anything. Which, I'm not gonna like try to say that jeans are my favorite clothes, but there is something about, it's a security. If you find trousers that fit you in this charity shop, or someone goes through their wardrobe and wants to give you clothes before they go to the charity shop, a lot of the times it's gonna be including jeans, isn't it? Because they are just so prevalent at this point in time. So I just kind of go with the flow. It's better that it's get used than thrown away. And indigo is ever so reliable, so even if it's a little lighter or a little darker, they still go well together, I think. I'm studying in Wales and there are sudden summer rains here too. I quite like the surprise if I can stand under a big tree until it passes. Oh, that's the best. It's so cozy, so booty. Why don't I have more pins nearby? There are some in my housewife. I realized after making this that she is a little bit large. I could have made her a little bit smaller and it would have been probably easier to place her on surfaces and arm rests and stuff as you're traveling, so that is definitely a lesson for if I make another one. But I still really enjoy having a thing that I can just wrap up and throw in a bag and bring with me and have everything I need on the go. And I also have like a double set of things, so if I do lose things while traveling, I still have stuff at home. I really enjoy that. I do the same with like toothbrushes and everything else as well. So if something gets lost when I get home, I still have what I need in the morning. Because that would be a bad morning if I didn't. I'm darning by following and reinforcing the original stitches, and there's this eternal question of how wide to continue. Oh well, that should do, I guess. Yeah, it's the thing you learn slowly, that if you're not wide enough, they just tear again very soon after, but it's a timely thing to do. I've had to learn that lesson a couple of times, and I don't mind. It's things get repaired and used again, and that is good at the end of the day. Bought a thermos for my tea because I drink super slow and I don't want to reheat it over and over. Yes, I do enjoy my cups, and this is a pretty large cup. I also had a really tiny cup when I was studying and I just wanted a hot cup of tea, but I have my trusty 1 liter thermos, which is what I pour from throughout the day when I'm working, and it is 3 cups of tea in this thermos, and our kettle water boiler can fit 4 cups of this cup perfectly at the max setting. So I will boil it in the morning and pour 1 cup into my cup and then the rest in the thermos, and it fits ever so perfectly. It's very satisfying. And then of course you get the satisfaction of you haven't wasted energy, because you boil the full kettle and you're using all of it. You don't lose any heat, and you have hot water for your tea throughout the day, which I really enjoy. I do also actually have a thermos cup, which I've never had before, and I got it when I splurged on this stainless steel thermos with a stainless steel thermos stopper, because the old one that I had it for 10 years and I ruined it. Because I do this, I pour my boiled water into it every day, and I will drink out of it throughout my work day or my study day or whatever, and so all that hot water, all that steam, slowly wearing away at the plastic cap, deteriorated the plastic. So at the end, after 10 years of using it nearly every day, the plastic broke to the point where it started leaking. And I just had to give up and had to admit that this was lost to recycling. I could no longer use this. I couldn't bring it with me anywhere. It wouldn't keep heat as well, because again, it was just leaking, and water got into the cap, and that was annoying. And also, unhygienic, potential for growing germs, didn't want that. So I splurged on buying one that is stainless steel everywhere, and you can just there's a little silicone liner, like an O-ring, on the top that you can buy replacements for, which I love. And I hope that I'm gonna have this thermos until I die, because it should be fairly indestructible. But I did also buy a thermos cup when I got the thermos, which it's this big luxury, and I use it a lot for cold water actually, and cold tea. It's lovely in summer, and thoroughly recommend, because your water stays cold all day. It's amazing. Someone always lugging around used bottles, like old plastic bottles for water. That is so amazing. I'm gonna have some ads, so I'm gonna have a little break. No, you are the wrong one. Come here. There we go. Let's see. We have 3 of the 1 liter thermoses at home because my mother, sister, and I all drink tea during the day. That is clever, because sometimes I feel bad that I take the whole thermos upstairs to my workroom, because then my spouse doesn't have hot water. But they don't drink tea as much as I do. They do prefer cold drinks, but Sometimes I feel bad. So maybe it's a good idea to buy a second one, because we only have the one. And then there's a tiny thermos that Spouse uses for coffee for guests. And of course that does not get used for hot tea water, because that flavors... I made that mistake once, and you know, the flavor does carry over. But more thermoses might be a good idea. I love my teacup. I have a shelf dedicated to my tea obsession, but I find I always return to one particular cup and will be very sad when it finally dies. Oh, I have. Yeah, I am similar. But I also really love shape. Like, I really like cups that go out and then in again, so that the tea stays warm for longer, and also it's really nice to hold. I really enjoy that sort of... It feels very snug in my hands because it curves in again. And we have a couple of cups that is not exactly like this, but has that similar sort of bulb shape that I really enjoy. And it has to be... I'm sorry, this is filthy. But it has to have a thin material. I can't abide... I know there are cups that are glass, and they have like an air pocket inside and 2 layers of thin glass, because it supposedly also keeps your brew hot for longer, or really thick ceramics or really thick glass. And I can't stand them, because if there's like a centimeter of ceramics, then it's hard for me to have room for the tea, and then I make a mess. So I really... thin. It has to be thin ceramics. And it has to be white or close to white on the inside, so that I can see the color of my tea. So I am quite specific about my teacups. I will often reject a beautiful, like I see those beautiful witchy cauldron mugs, and they're gorgeous, and I kind of want one just because they're super cute, but a lot of the times they are black in the inside, and no thank you. I need to see the color of my tea, and yeah, other other weirdly specific things that shouldn't matter, but it brings me joy when they do. What a pleasant surprise. Hello from Zealand, Denmark. Hello, Toria, welcome. We are being quite random and lots of fun. And good evening, Kristine, love the sweater. Good evening, Alex, welcome. Yes, this is... I stole this sweater from Spouse because it's been chilly. We had a very warm May, and now we are back to intermittent cloudy and sometimes sunny, and it's getting really chilly again, which is my preferred summer, honestly. The plants love it, everything is super lush, but it's chilly enough that I was like, let us steal the sweater and be a bit festive. And Spouse bought it in London about 10 years ago. From one of those just booths that sell clothes of questionable origin. And sometimes we find it, you know, in the wardrobe, and it is bright and colorful, and it brings a smile to my face. And I wanted to knit myself a cardigan, like a nice wool cardigan, similar to the red sweater that I wear, the reddish brown with the leaves. But I want to make one that is open so I can wear it like this when it's somewhat chilly, but you don't need a full sweater situation. So I do like this sweater. It is a very cheerful one. I have stolen it on many occasions, as one does. We have the luxury of being similar sizes, so I don't get the oversized, but I can still confidently pull on anything and steal it and run away with it for the day, which is good fun. May I ask, what's all of your thoughts on Richard Dawkins, if you have any? Found a book of his at a book crossing point, and uneducated me is trying to understand. Richard Dawkins, is that one of those people doing permaculture? Because if we are talking about gardening, because I'm not sure, I'm not the best at names. No, I do not know this person. It was not the person I thought he was, but I'd be curious how you find their book. Let's see. But if we're talking about Brits I do enjoy, Charles Dowding has a gardening channel on the old YouTubes, and he is super sweet, super endearing, just seems really nice and genuine. And let's see if I can find him so I can send you to the channel. Let's see. And he does no dig and really advocates for doing no dig and just compost and letting nature kind of do what it wants to do so that it's less work for you. And he's just really sweet. He just strikes me as super sweet. I'm gonna be able to find him while I'm trying to chat while. There he is, Charles Dowding. Let's see if I can. It's been a while since I watched his videos, because we don't really have garden space to work with, but super sweet, super comforting, calm to listen to. We talk sometimes about how a lot of content, both on streaming services or on YouTube, it's very energetic, and sometimes you just want something nice and calm and cozy with no drama, and Charles Dowding is definitely one of those. It's super nice. I love the tea, but believe it or not, I'm allergic. Oh no! Every now and then I have some iced tea and I water it down significantly. Oh, yeah, that must be difficult when you like something and you're allergic to it. Oof, commiserations. I'm luckily not allergic, so I can have a little bit of... I can sip my tea throughout the day and just enjoy my mildly flavored... I mostly drink green tea, and some people will tease me that it doesn't just taste like grass, and I'm like, that's fine by me. I don't need strongly flavored drink. I just like mildly flavored some things. But yeah, being allergic to something you like must be hard. That doesn't sound like fun at all. I used to be allergic to... I didn't get, my throat closing up, but I just had, I would get eczemas. In a lot of with elbows, behind the knees, my face would get really red. So it wasn't dangerous to my respiratory system. I just got really red and really aggressive rashes, and had to carry this cortisone cream with me. I was, in primary school, and I carried with me, I think, 4 different lotions in my backpack. You had mild cortisone, medium level cortisone, and really strong cortisone, and then there was general moisturizer cream. And I was allergic to furry animals, so cats and dogs, which was a problem because I love animals and I would always run up to them. And makeup, interestingly, it clogged the pores, and insect stings, which was problematic also because I would run after the bees in the garden and catch them in a little jam jar for the day and try to give them pieces of toys that looked like honeycomb, because I really wanted honey. I loved honey, and it was too expensive and we very rarely had it, and I wanted it. So cute. Stressing out everyone around her for a long time. But luckily I had one of those skin eczemas that I grew out of, like child allergies. They were hoping, and I was very lucky that I did. So commiserations to anyone struggling with that as adults, because it's no fun. I have a witchy cauldron mug, but it was so big that I actually use it for soups. Maybe that would be a good alternative. Ooh, this was a super gift. One of my office mates and friends, who I still have good contact with, we're still friends, came to my dissertation. We shared an office at the time, which was super fun, super nice to have a friend to write your thesis with. And they came with 2 enormous soup mugs. They must be half a liter, which I don't know what that is in American, but it's around 2 cups. Must be more than that. Maybe it's 600 milliliters. I'm not sure, but they're big. They're super big. And they have that thick ceramic that I don't really like drinking out of, but they are excellent for soup. I don't care that it says tea time on the inside. I will take it, and it fits one portion of soup for me perfectly, and I can microwave it if I've made it the day before and eat it. And it's perfect because it has a handle, so it's not so hot when you pull it out of the microwave, and it's a perfect size. Or sometimes we use it for snacks in the couch. And yeah, they're super nice. So I do support big teacups as soup bowls because they are excellent for that job. I love holding a round cup. When studying up in winter Norway, I loved warming my hands before drawing lessons. Yes, that's the thing. A cup of tea is like, it's a cozy moment as much as it is a drink when you're, especially in winter when it's cold. Like just the holding of it, snuggling it. Sometimes you just need something warm to snuggle and hold and cozy and have and cuddle with. And sometimes the drink is bonus. You just want that little break moment in between other things to just hold that warmth and enjoy it. I love the chilly summer and I'm dreading the inevitable heat wave, but everyone here just wants heat and sunshine. I hear you, and I will take the rainy, overcast, mild, cool summers any day. They are much easier to put on more clothes than to just be super overheated, but people still want the sunshine. I like both, you know, you get some sunshine, you get some overcast, you get some rain. All weathers in one day, that's how it needs to be when you're in Norway. Preferably all seasons too, if you're lucky. That's when you know it's really a Norwegian summer. Anything below 22 degrees is way too cold for me. That is so interesting how people are used to different temperatures. I struggle to focus when it gets too warm, my brain just gets boiled. So I can really thrive between like 15 and 20. That's probably the best zone for me. But it's always interesting to me how different people find things hot or cold or something in between. I also love open cardigans. I fell in love with a 1900s inspired sweater, but I plan on steeking it and turning it into a cardigan. Yeah, I've seen so many excellent steeking videos and tutorials, and I know this is the common response, and I know they're much easier to knit than to knit back and forth, but I still feel so intimidated by steeking because you spend all these hours making the thing and then you're going to cut into the knit and it's going to unravel if you're not careful, and But I want to do some cardigans and I would like to film them. I don't know when that will be because they take so long, so maybe it'll be a project over many years, but I don't know, maybe we'll do one without steeking and one with, if I'm brave enough, because it does look terrifying. My goodness. Half a liter is 2.1 cups. Yeah, so we're in the right area. So I'm guessing it's 2.5 cups. No, not 2.5, like, yeah, 2.25 maybe. They're big cups. I don't fill them all the way up, but they are chunky cups, but excellent for soups and snacks. My favorite infusion is called Happy Pumpkin from Tea Shop. I tried many teas and infusions, but I always go back to it. Highly recommend. That sounds really cozy, especially when it's getting cold outside, because I assume it's one of those with pumpkin spice with all the warm spices like cloves and cinnamon and allspice and maybe some cardamom thrown in there for good measure, like all of those really nice warming spices. I am super basic. I really love a good mint green tea with just gunpowder green tea and loads of mint, or a good green tea and citrus and ginger is also really, really nice. But I do keep coming back to my mint green tea. That is my safe go-to. I will buy it by the kilo which is the unit the loose leaf tea shops receive them in. So I will just put in an order. Right now we're far away from my tea shops. I will just order it online and they will just send me the whole unopened bag. No, you know, fancy little bag that they've measured it into. They just send me the whole 1 kilo bag and I go through it in less than a year. So it's no problem for, you know, flavor or keeping, because I just drink that stuff by the bucketful. It is my safety. But I drink other teas as well, especially when I'm at guesting at other people's houses. And so the book you were talking about is called The Selfish Gene, or if it's the Selfish Gene, I would consider that an interesting historical piece, but not how the scientific community sees evolution today. Very influential at the time, though. Interesting. Oh, those books are so interesting. I once had this student project, you know, during my master's. I was hired by the Institute of Chemistry because there had been some new HSE laws. So there were new safety laws about chemistry. So they had to go through their entire collection of historical chemicals that were over 100 years old, from their collection that had just been, you know, on exhibitions in museums and were just, you know, treated as historical artifacts. And now they had to go through and identify and get safety data sheets for all of them. And this can be a challenge because a lot of these chemicals are not called what they are called today. Back then, you don't necessarily, it's not one for one. So I had to go into the archives and take out 100-year-old books and try to figure out what they were calling what and how they thought molecular structures work. And it was super interesting. There was a lot of wrong things, but still super interesting and so cool. We are gonna have ants again. Ooh, I need to hydrate. I will struggle with the old voice box. Yeah, I really enjoy these because I can just pop it in my bag. It's not too big, I can carry it, it's not too heavy, but keeps my water cold all day, or iced tea if I have it. But that was a really cool project that we worked on, and some of them didn't have health and safety data sheets. I had to write them, which is not really something a master's student probably should be doing, but we managed to get to the end and identify all of them, and I made them a nice Excel sheet going, this is what it says on the bottle, this is what it is in modern chemistry terminology, and here is the data sheet, here is a folder with all of the data sheets and all of the everything. So yeah. It was a fun project though. Me in an archival storage on some cardboard boxes that may do as my desk, and working alone every Friday for a whole semester, which is bliss for an introvert, just cataloging all these chemicals. It was great. Oh, I want more. I would take more work like that in a heartbeat. But I mean, once you've cataloged it, it's already done, isn't it? What would a non-scientific educated person read to learn now? Can you help? Well, I know this is addressed to Kay, but about evolutionary biology. That is interesting. I am not sure. Let's see. Richard Dawkins is a good writer, but also transphobic, I'm sorry to say. Yeah, that is... we don't want that. Let people be people. Yeah, I will never understand, especially when it comes to transphobic youth, because we know for a lot of them, it is either a matter of a lot of the time being suicidal or being allowed to be who they are on the inside. And so long as it doesn't hurt anyone and being offended is not being hurt, why not just let people express themselves in whatever way most suits them? We make so many mistakes as teenagers, and so many people want to pull out the detransitioning ratio as like proof that it's not really working, which is horse shit, because the regret ratio of surgeries for gender confirming procedures is so much lower than any other surgery. So it's not really, and everyone changes, and I know people who started out trans and started transitioning and have lived like that for a decade, and then with all of the new language that is coming in and all of the new ways that we are learning about gender, realized that they weren't really trans, they were non-binary, they just didn't have the language for it at the time, so trans was the closest thing they had, and that's valid, and people who are trans are valid, people who feel like one gender or the other or neither are all valid. And I'm just like, whatever, because everything is chaotic and confusing when you're a teenager, isn't it? I don't want to do that again, no thank you. Anything that can help you explain to yourself who you are, help you express who you are, help you just be yourself, you know, however way, shape or form that is. For some people that is through gender conformity or like confirming their gender in various ways. For some people it's finding a friend group that they really finally feel like they are being accepted in. There are so many ways, and it's so hard to be a human in the first place. Like, just let people be themselves, so long as they aren't hurting themselves or others. I don't have any qualms with anything. I am old-fashioned enough that I prefer not to be a member of your bedroom, you know. There's that whole difference between just kissing your spouse in public and sitting there making out. I don't feel the need to be included in feeling like I'm part of the foreplay on the bus and stuff like that, but people showing affection to each other, being nice to each other, I don't see why we should limit that. And again, especially for trans youth, the alternative is tragically very often suicide, and I would rather tell them they're valid and, you know, they're worth something and they are important in the world and the world wants them and they can be themselves. And yeah, you are valid. It shouldn't be hard, should it? And if your parents won't love you, if your friends find it weird, if your family find it weird, I will love you for you just through the screen, because it shouldn't be so hard. And it always hits me when you see pride parades where older people are saying, you know, free hugs from a dad or free hugs from a mom, and you see queer people just throw themselves at a perfect stranger because their own family just rejected who they are just for them being themselves. That shouldn't be as big of a thing as it is, you know? It's... yeah. I'm rambling and jumbling and jumping back and forth, but yeah. You are valid. Queer people are valid. You are welcome here. I will do my best to make space for you. Like, you are welcome here. Absolutely. Come, let's make things and have fun. And like in one way, I don't care what gender you are, what gender identity you identify with, but because it shouldn't matter. The only time someone's gender or sexual preferences matter is if you want them to be your partner or one of your partners. That's the only instance where it matters what their preferences are. The rest of the time, with my friends, my colleagues, co-workers, fellow society members, like, it literally doesn't matter. You can be anything, and you can tell me if you want or not tell me if you want, and yeah. I wish we lived in a society where it didn't matter, but it does, and it's still a problem, or people make it a problem, so we still have to talk about it, don't we? Might I suggest something rocking a few worlds at the moment? She Has Her Mother's Laugh by Carl Zimmer. Ooh, we are on the evolutionary biology, so I love to get book recommendations. That sounds intriguing. Hello, I'm a new subscriber. So happy to have stumbled over your hangout. Was so unmotivated, but now I managed to pick up a sewing project and work alongside you. I love that. Let's do some more body doubling and have fun. And if you've seen our Discord, the link should be in the pinned comment. I have seen, and I'm super happy for this, that more of you community members are doing body doubling chats amongst yourselves without me even having to be sitting here having a live hangout with you. And I find that so exciting that you are building a like nice supportive community amongst yourselves and having fun and just supporting each other, having a good time, all of the things, you know. It's yeah, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. It's becoming a super warm and welcoming space. Absolutely do recommend. More books. Let's see. This isn't a book, but PBS Eons YouTube videos are a great resource for learning about evolution and the Earth's history. Oh, I love it. Love science recommendations. The channel History of the Earth and its sister channels are also very recommendable when it comes to how life evolved on the planet. They have a nice calm style of presenting. Oh, that is so nice. Sounds very good indeed. Maybe I should watch more science stuff again. It's been a while, although I do still watch Hank Green for his chaotic "whatever is this man thinking about today" content, and I love it. It's such a great example of just a generally curious mind, just enjoying learning, just having fun with it, just learning in all forms. It's the best. Also, trans rights, yes. Protect trans kids. They need it. It's, yeah. Very much so. Ooh, more books. The Ancestor's Tale, A Pilgrimage to the Dawn of Evolution by, Richard Dawkins again. It's another book, look at evolution and our history. I remember seeing, I think, it was John Green over on, was it Crash Course? It's not evolutionary biology because it's too early, but I'm pretty sure they were talking to, was it Katie Mack? And they were talking about the beginning of the universe and how it all started, which again is super interesting stuff to watch and hear about and just hear them talk about. Fascinating stuff. I love listening to people who are specialists in field that I am absolutely not, and just hearing all that intricate knowledge about all of the different things is super, super cool. My ADHD self has finally settled down with my knitting, and I really needed the body doubling. Thank you. You are welcome to join us for some body doubling whenever it fits with the schedule. It's nice for me too. It turns out that it's working as body doubling for me too, because I can't be stressing myself out over all the editing I haven't done, because I can't exactly sit and edit while I'm talking to you. One, it wouldn't be very cozy. It wouldn't be anything for you to look at because it would all be on my screen, but also I am absolutely sure that I would not be able to focus while I am trying to talk to you at the same time. I've seen some people do things like programming while they are streaming and talking to their chat, and I don't think I could focus like that. One thing at a time for me, or very simple tasks that I can easily do while chatting. I don't know if I have good book recommendations. I mainly read the scientific textbook stuff and not science communication. But yeah, second in crash course stuff here on YouTube. It is very enjoyable to see all the different stuff that they have and all the different experts that they bring on. Like, oh goodness, her name, Alexis Nicole for biology and botany. Amazing stuff. I love to see it. But yeah, experts in, I just love talking to scientific experts in different fields, because especially when they're deeply passionate about what they do, it's just super engaging conversations. Even if I know very little about it already, it's just so interesting. But yeah, evolutionary biology is not something that I ever collaborated with while I did my PhD. I mean, we were working with biologists who would go out, like, at least at our university, but I think this is pretty universal for biologists. It was a tactical move of my supervisor to team up with biology, because I had a very unique experience as a PhD student. My supervisor had just been hired by the university a month before, and when I reached out to ask if we maybe could collaborate and apply for this funding from the institute together, they were all for it, but that meant that I became his first PhD, and we had no master students, no other postdocs or PhDs. In the very beginning, it was just the two of us. We had no lab, no instruments, no equipment, nothing. Well, no, when a group gave us half their lab, we had a dingy old centrifuge from like the 80s where the cord was 2 short circuits away from a fire, and our engineer over all things electrical, like printers and stuff, was not happy about how that looked. Like, it was on its last legs, to be sure. But yeah, we didn't have a lot, so I had the very unique experience of, instead of joining an already running research group, which is the most common thing that happens, I actually got to like be and help my supervisor and see a research group sort of being built from scratch. It was super interesting, super cool. And of course, our budgets are not the biggest in the beginning. So as analytical chemists, who our primary research was among developing methods for analyzing lots of different environmental contaminants, so things that we make and that goes into the environment, nature, and then looking for a lot of different chemicals, making methods that comprises, like, a lot of the time I would have 10, 20 different chemicals in a single method, and a method ideally would be like 5 to 6 minutes long. Some of them were 4, some of them were 7 or 8, but like less than 10 minutes, which is very, very short to get a lot of data, because a lot of these instruments are limited. We had a super cool instrument that was worth like 4 houses, terrifying to work with, that would be shared between chemistry, biology, and biotechnology, and you were charged by the hour. So if you have a short method and it isn't charged by the sample, you get a lot more data for a lot less cost. So that's what we would do. We would make super short methods, super efficient methods that would just run hundreds of samples in a few hours, and we developed methods, and until we could get the funding to go and get samples for ourselves, my supervisor made friends with biology who has freezers full of samples from various fieldwork that is just waiting for projects to happen, or they did what they wanted to do with it, but they still have more, so why not keep it for later? So we could collaborate with them, and they would give us their samples, and we would credit them in our papers. It was an excellent collaboration. Very fun. And ads are about to hit us. We are getting more cool recommendations. If podcasts work, I recall a number of absolutely fantastic eulogies episodes. Can recommend pretty much every single one. Ooh. Yeah, I think my favorite podcast, which is not evolutionary biology, it's, psychology and neuroscience and behavioral science, but all things brain, which, if you like podcasts, Hidden Brain is so good. The host, Shankar Vedantam, does excellent questions, super well prepared, super insightful, and all the researchers that he interviews are experts in various things to do with the mind, habit creation, habit formation, success mindset, change. They once did an episode on when calm people snap, which is, you have someone who's really kind, really quiet, really calm, and suddenly they snap and they behave super violently under threat or something. And they have been researching why that happens and how that happens, and how, when the threat is large enough and you're pushed large enough, you just sort of start bypassing the thinking brain and go straight to the lizard brain and just react with instinct. And it's super fascinating stuff. They've done episodes on success and, improving yourself with new habits. They've done super interesting. There was that's an old one, but they did a super fascinating one about embracing the fact that climate change is coming. It's already here for a lot of, especially Pacific island nations and places like that. Climate change is already drowning their islands and, losing them their livelihoods and their habitats and their country in a lot of the cases. It's already being devastating. So it's not a future thing. It's already here. And they were talking about how that it isn't something that's going to happen. It's here and it's going to keep happening, and sort of embracing sort of climate resilience, I think there were. It's a long time since I listened to the episode, but that was what got me hooked on Hidden Brain in the first place. Someone was talking about this climate resilience thinking, that instead of talking about how we're going to stop climate change, it's trying to mitigate and reduce the impact, but there's still going to be a significant impact because we're too far into the consequences to stop it entirely. So how do we embrace going from the mindset of trying to stop it to mitigating the impact the best we can, but knowing that the impact will still hit us. The impact is still hitting us, is currently hitting us, has already started for a while. And that was a super fascinating episode, because here in wealthy, American, European countries, a lot of the talk is still about stopping climate change, whereas in a lot of, again, Pacific nations and African countries, it's still hitting so hard already that it's more about a different mindset. How do we deal with it now that it's already here? Oh God, climate grief is such a topic for me. I love nature and it breaks my heart how much of it is being destroyed. Yup. Same. It's... Even if people may adapt, a lot of species cannot and are suffering and dying. Yeah. It's one of the things that I talk to my spouse about, that by the looks of it, the polar bear, which is such an iconic climate change just footage, is already, dying. The sea ice is melting, and I don't think we can save it personally, which is horrible and super sad. And yeah, so many species can't adapt, and also so many Arctic species, especially when things get warmer, other species move further north because they expand their tolerance to their climate, and then the Arctic species are pushed even further north until the point, there is no further north. So then the species who are moving further north because their tolerance for things are changing, and then they push out the Arctic species and they die out because everything else is moving further north to adapt to what is going on. And there was this fascinating, I'm gonna mess up the details, but there was a species of tree, I think? It was some kind of botany thing that lives on top of a mountain. I don't remember if it was in the south of Europe or north of Africa, but I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was in that geographical region. And it's on top of this mountain from when the weather was colder. It can only, I think it was in Africa, yeah. And it can only live on top of the mountain because it needs cold weather. And everything below the mountain is hot, tropical, warm, desert climate. And when the tree zone and the weather gets warmer, this very specific species that you only find here is going to die out because there is nowhere for it to go. Again, like with the Arctic species, there is no further up, there is no further north. It stops, which is super sad. It's but it is the reality of things, which is super upsetting. So isn't that part of why we darn our clothes and use 10-year-old fabulous jackets and eat our food and hold big corporations accountable, because we know that they have a lot more power than we do as singular consumers, although we absolutely can vote with our wallets, which is something I recommend if you know a company is doing something really bad. If you can, reduce how much you buy from them, that is the only language they understand. Western Germany had 3 devastating floods in the last 6 months, while the east is in drought. Yeah, it's awful. There are so many more. In Norway too, you're getting more of the 100-year floods, 1,000-year floods, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it's a statistical term that, statistically, every 1,000 years you will get a super big flood. So big, but it's a very unlikely event, hence they're called 1,000-year floods. And the same with the 100-year floods, which are, not as extreme as 1,000-year floods, but they're still pretty large. You don't expect to get them more often than every 100 years. And we're seeing more of these extremes than would be expected historically for a lot of events. You're seeing a lot of these things that statistically we wouldn't expect more than every 100 years or so are now starting to happening, every 10 years, every 5 years. And it's just, things are happening a lot more often, a lot more extreme. Super devastating stuff. But I am of the opinion that knowledge is well, at least information knowledge in many ways is neutral, and I want to inform people so that they can make choices of their own. Although I have heard my videos about these things, or climate and textiles and how things are made, being described as depressing, and I'm like, it's just information. I'm just trying to share information with you. But I forget what it's like when people encounter something for the first time, because a lot of these things I've been aware of for quite a few years by now. Even Australia and the ozone layer. At least the ozone layer, yeah, is very challenging, but it's, at least that was one of the things that got better though, but still not as good as it was. Is it getting worse again now though? I haven't heard about that, but hopefully we can keep it, because our planet needs its ozone layer of sunscreen, because the sun is strong enough as she is. Certain penguins are dying too because the sea ice melts before the chicks are ready to swim, so they drown by the 10,000s. Yeah, there are so many stories like that, and it's super, super sad. And more action is needed. And it's, yeah, holding corporations accountable and, uncool stuff like using what you have and not buying from corporations that by law should need to care more about their shareholders' profits than anything else, which in that case change the laws, innit? The laws are written by humans, so we can rewrite them to be more suited for what we need. Kristine, can you please repeat the name of the podcast? Have to see it written to memorize. Don't worry, I can write it down. It's called Hidden Brain. It's hosted by Shankar Vedantam. Let's see if I can find a link for you actually. It's super good. It's an excellent science podcast. I find it super interesting. They go super in depth about various things to do with the brain, and I, as someone who just enjoys learning more about myself and understanding myself in this way, I find it really fun and engaging and valuable. I really enjoy them. They are super, super fascinating. So I will go as far as to say that it is my favorite podcast. It is excellent. It's a very good podcast. Yeah, I see at least 2 Mediterranean insect species in my garden here in central Germany now. Yeah, things are moving. The Arctic fox, for instance, is struggling because the red fox is moving further up, and it has been endangered for some time, and then it was coming back and doing better, and now I'm not entirely sure of the status of it, but it is struggling because the red fox is moving further north, and at the point it is, yeah, the Arctic fox has nowhere else to go. Hey, madam. It's good you come to cheer us up, because we are getting a bit dark, aren't we? It's always the time when people go, I don't want to deal with this stuff, I don't want to hear about it. Cuddles always makes things better. But if I can finish this thread, which is very short, then I can get the dangerous needle out of being risky for you. Let's see. Yes, I'm not ignoring you, I am just getting rid of this little needle. Oop. Madam, don't eat my needles. They are not kitty snacks. I know you love to pull them out, but... See, I will give you attention now. So do not steal my pins, like you did when you were a kitty. The average amount of heat in Finland is 33 days in a year, and not much, if any, of it in May. Now we got 16 days already in May. Yeah, May was really unusually warm in Norway as well. And last year the drought was so bad at the beginning of the year, like just when the crops are starting to grow, it was a severe drought, which was really bad because it really stunted the growth of the wheat and the rye and the different grains, and it was not good. So we were quite anxious to see if it was going to happen again this year, because you can't have too many grain crop failings in a season in a row before things start to get problematic, because a lot of people forget that farmers are the ones growing our food, and without them we'd be in a lot of trouble. But farmers are very much dependent on the weather. The Infinite Money Cage from the BBC has an episode called What is Life? Oh, from 2020 that I think goes a bit into evolutionary aspects. A bit older is there Are Humans Still Evolving? From 2019. I love it. So many fairly recent productions and cool things. Is excellent. I still have to gear myself up to watch most of your videos, because while I know it is important information, it also hits my happy crafts escapist bubble. Madam, we have talked about this not being a scratching post. I am being ignored, but we have talked about it. That I usually used to get away from. Yeah, I hear that, and I am not trying to push. It can be quite depressing, so we do need escapism, like the whole fatigue that happens when you try to care about everything all at once because the news is barraging you, and then you have to pull yourself back into your introverted self and take care of yourself a bit because you're no good to the world if you're constantly burnt out and on edge. So that is definitely take care of yourself. And I try to reduce how much news I read. Like, I have a couple of trusted sources and I don't try to scroll them all day, you know, because there's only so much that can happen. So I find that by checking only once or twice a day, I don't get overwhelmed. Like, I get tired of the radio playing. I like the music, but once every hour they play the news and I'm like, but I've already heard this many times. So definitely protect yourself, because, well, some people want to watch the news all the time because they feel a need to be informed. I'm like, you don't really get more informed though, you just get more terror and anxiety, and a summary once in a while is generally enough to know what's going on and read up on party politics and vote when it's time for that and all of those things. But I don't have to. I'm of the opinion that, I mean, in Norway we have, you know, many different parties. Hello. So there are many different choices. It's not a two-party system. It's a lot. And they have political debates and I will always ignore them because I get overwhelmed by all that voice. So I will just go and read the party programs of the ones I'm interested in, and then I'll vote from there, and then that's as much as I will do, because who needs overwhelm? That is definitely, yeah. So definitely take care of yourself. Like, don't feel bad for not watching the more environmental chemistry things. So it's okay. Engage as much or as little as you need. You're leaving us already? Oh well. Yes, let's see. Continued for Ologis. I think the most fitting was Evolutionary Biology Darwinism with John McCornack. Ologis is read like plural of biology. Ah, so ologies. Aha. Yeah, I was sort of reading it as if there were two O's in the beginning, and I was a little bit confused. So it's good to have a little bit of a pronunciation check. Released on April 18th, been a while. 2018, been a while. Yeah, some podcast episodes, when I look at them, I can't believe how old they are, because how did that happen so long ago? Thank you, Kitty, for your appearance. Yes, it's always nice when she comes to join us and hang out for a bit. Let's see. These could definitely use some patches. It's getting really threadbare. Trying to get ahead of the patching is always hard. And we're gonna get ads in about 10 seconds, so that seems good timing for me. Shall we just continue? Yeah. Has it been almost 2 hours of me just patching a single tiny hole? This is why people don't darn their clothes, because it does take a while. Although I have seen people darn by machine, which is super cool. Not something I have mastered, but I love when I see examples of it, because it looks super, super cool. But yeah. Don't worry about the typos, we do the best we can. Oof, I may have put an alarm to join and then immediately fallen back asleep. Fever will do that to you. Oh no! I hope you get better. I hope you feel better soon. Fevers are the worst. At least you can watch it back if you want to at a later time. But yeah, that is not a good time. At least we are pretty chill around here, so it shouldn't be too overwhelming when one is exhausted and sleepy. Are embroidery snips the best for this job? No, but my fabric shears are all the way over there. I wonder if I'm just gonna do this without folding, with the bigger stitches, so it will be less noticeable when wearing them. Time for dog walkies for me, but thank you all for company while crafting and searching a bit. Have a good walk. You probably don't see it by now, but are we still going? Yeah, for now we are still going. I'm not sure for how much longer we'll be going, because I can feel that I'm getting tired, so I will get less and less coherent as time passes. I have friends who can very much confirm that I do get less coherent the more tired I am. Am I hearing some ticking in the audio, or is it my earbuds? Interesting. I hope there isn't a lot of ticking for you, but I hope the microphone, because one of the cats is eating downstairs and they have this enrichment tower where it's 3 levels, well 4 if you include the ground, but we put food in the top and there are holes all around it, like an inverted pyramid, and the kitties have to dig their paws into the top tier and push it into the second one, and then down into the first one, and then down onto the ground where they can eat it, or onto the floor, which, you know, means that we can free feed them technically, which is easy when we have cat sitters and for us, but they still have to spend some time, as kitties would do, and sort of hunt the food. And we have a couple of different enrichment toys, and it does make a noise when it hits the ground, so that could be it if there is something else, because it isn't raining at the moment, so it could be the cats eating, and me pulling threads, but yeah, it does make a noise when it hits the floor, and it's my favorite because we have a lot of balls too that you open and then you pour food inside and then you close it again, but they take a long time to fill. Like, it's hard to fill them, so I find it easier to just fill up their tower, because then it takes me no time at all to fill it, but a long time for the kitties to empty it. Although I will say, because Sut's experience with most enrichment toys is violence is the answer. So instead of sticking her paw into the top level and, you know, paw out some food further and further down, she will just grab the whole tower and shake it. Which is hilarious, and it still only drops a couple of pieces, so she still has to work for it, but experience sadly has taught Sut that violence, if nothing else works, try violence. And it's hard to get her out of that, because, I mean, it usually works. So that has been interesting to see how Embla will respond to something and actually do it like it's designed to, and Sut will go, no, I'll just bite it and shake it until it yields. So she has destroyed quite a few toys in that manner. I guess my earbuds are starting to break down? Oh no, that is the worst. I had a pair of earbuds do that to me too, or they aren't breaking down in that way. It was, again, one of my seldom splurges. I felt quite extravagant getting a pair of small, you know, Bluetooth earbuds, because, you know, you don't have a audio jack in your phone these days, so I would have to get a converter, which I am actually tempted to do now, because we had these for, it's been I think 2.5, almost 3 years, and at first when I went for a walk, the noise cancelling went out on me and hasn't worked in over 2 years, which was pretty annoying, and now the battery has really given out on both my spouse's and my earbuds around the same time too. Like, it went from having really good battery to less than an hour of battery in just one go. There was no gradual change. It just happened overnight. Super annoying. And I don't know enough about batteries, but it's really weird behavior. So I'm wondering what's going on there. And I'm annoyed enough about it because we know that batteries wear out that I might actually go and get a converter instead of trying to find another headset and just use some of my good old wired earbuds that I've had since I was a university student, and they still work excellently, and they don't require a battery and they don't require charging. They just work, and less waste all around. So I'm considering just going back to wired because less hackable and less annoying in many ways. There should be a robotic mouse that can be filled with food and has an AI that comes up with random paths around the house. Interesting. Finally, good use of AI. Yeah, there is a lot of good uses of AI, but like some people point out, AI is conflating a lot of different terms. Like if I had an AI that could integrate the chromatographic peaks of my work when I was doing research, that would be super, super helpful. That would really help automate if I could just train it in how I want things to be integrated, and then it can go through my thousands of peaks and I don't have to manually check them myself when I need to. That would be really useful. But that is a different type of AI than art AI, but it's still kind of, you teach it what you want and then you build an algorithm that learns how you like to integrate your peaks and what is good noise and bad noise, which will be a really good use of it. But it's being conflated with so many other things that it's easy to lose track of a lot of the good uses. Like it isn't just bad and stealing art and filling the internet with trash content, which in many ways seems intentionally confusing that we all call this AI because they are so vastly different, which can be very infuriating. But that robotic mouse sounds absolutely adorable. The only one I've seen around here that helps, instigate the cat instinct of needing to hunt for mice and having small meals throughout the day is a little plush mouse with a little container with a lid sort of inside the mouse, and you fill it with food and you hide it around the house and the cat has to go search for their food, which is super cute. But I don't need a toy mouse to do that. I can just hide a little handful of food in a bowl round about the house. But the AI one does sound very, very cute. Work stronger, not smarter? Exactly. So it is a good epitome of, just use violence, just use the teeth, they haven't failed me yet. So that is always what she will go for when trying to solve a new problem. We have the same, when we started with the enrichment toys for the cats, we started with used egg cartons, which are a very nice, cheap alternative to start, and they still really like them. And again, Embla has a very small face, so can just sort of shove her snout into the egg carton and get the food. I don't know if that's going to stay, if she still has a growth spurt to go, but at the moment she's still so tiny and so cute that she can just shove her little snout into the food, which is super adorable. And Soot, again, because violence is always the answer, will just grab the egg carton and shake. No pawing required. And then there's food all over the floor, as is her way. If brute force isn't enough, you're not using enough of it? Yeah, exactly. That is exactly Soot's approach to every problem we try to throw at her to get her more enriched and entertained and using her noggin, which Soot is too smart for her own good. It's actually like at the point where it can be a challenge to try to keep her entertained, because she is clever for a cat. Embla is very much average. It's very cute to see the difference. Like Embla is, well, I'm not even sure because I'm not used like Soot is. I'm so used to Soot, so I don't know if Embla is a dum-dum or if she is just a normal cat, but compared to Soot, she's definitely not quite as aware of the other things going on around her, and will just gung-ho straight for a mouse regardless of corners or obstructions in her way. So we really do have to watch out for her, make sure she doesn't get hurt when we're playing. That kitty would pick the two-handed warhammer over the bow or spells in Skyrim. She would. She absolutely would. But she would be clever about it too, which is the terrifying part. Yeah, I know how awesome AI is in science. And you mean, as far as I know, the piecing together of ancient DNA strands is being done with AI and machine learning, and the recent deciphering of those Herculean scrolls too. Yeah, exactly. There's so much good use of, machine learning, automated pattern recognition, things that, us autists have traditionally been very good at, but machines can just keep doing it at much higher speeds and all through the night and day, and just process so fast, do so much cool stuff. So much cool machine learning going on. And there are things that humans are good at too, which is, there was this protein folding project that they managed to design, into a game, and they launched it online, and the whole premise is proteomics, I'm pretty sure it was, which, folding of proteins should be, is hard. Reading the DNA sequence and how it is expressed is one thing, but knowing how it folds in 3D space is often very difficult, because proteins are usually very, very specific about their requirements and will denaturate or unfold into just a long strand when you expose it to conditions outside of their very specific requirements. So it's been difficult to know how they behave, how they look in 3D space, what they actually look like, so that we know how a protein fits into another molecule has been really difficult. And they made this game where they have the sequence, because the sequencing is easier, and they have a couple of conditions, like these would repulse each other, these would be attracted to each other, these would work, and this would look like so. And they have a lot of players just trying different things, and it was one of those citizen scientist project where once you learn from the basic tools, you could get a lot of people suggesting structures, getting a lot of different solutions, and people finding solutions to proteins that scientists haven't known how they were folded and didn't have the time themselves to sit and figure it out. But some people will just get really into this stuff and, sit for hours and work at it and have fun with it and figure it out and figure things out. And then suddenly you can progress research and science a lot further, because you managed to make something where you could, harvest or utilize the amazing possibility in people just wanting to play a game and figure out a puzzle. That's the thing, it's so satisfying to figure out a puzzle, and knowing that you're actually helping science as you're doing so at the same time, just super, super cool. My favorite is that time someone made a program to identify bear claw pastries at checkout, but when that program also somehow turned out to be good for identifying cancerous growth or something with cancer identification. Yeah, I remember that. That was a Japanese invention, wasn't it? So cool. When you develop one thing and it turns out it's really good at another thing. I agree. It's super, super cool that something that was developed in a trivial way turns out to be really cool at something else. And that is something that is really cool, again, with machine learning, that you can give it a lot of picture data of a lot of different skin tones and a lot of different skin conditions, like, dermatitis and cancerous skin growth or other harmful things. And it could help flag pictures of patients where the machine learning will be like, you should have a look at this, because that's what I like when we talk about machine learning, is lightening the load of the scientist, of the doctor, of the researcher. If they can manage to have a pretty big acceptance rate, they just have, I would rather a machine learning, especially in a medical context, if it's picture analysis, have more false positives than false negatives, because if they just flag positives, but also some false positives. And then they just got sent to the doctor, and they can then confirm visually with their amazing skill and experience whether it's something that they should check out further or call the patient in for more investigation. That is really, really cool and lightens the workload for doctors, or could do, by quite a lot, which I think is cool. But yeah, there are so many amazing applications for machine learning and pattern recognition and that kind of thing that it's just, yeah, so much potential for getting so much more done, which is good, but also we've seen that when you get more done, you just get more work, but that is a different discussion, isn't it? But especially with healthcare, I think there's a lot of potential to keep a lot of patients safer. But still having doctors, again, like you would have scientists, being sort of the topmost, like you don't leave decisions to the machine learning tools, you just use them to go through the data, and then you actually visually inspect and confirm the findings or non-findings. It's honestly wild, yeah, it really, really is. It's so cool. So cool. I wish I could do programs like that and make stuff like that, because so amazing. But yeah, since that was what I worked with, that is what I have. Like, I know that would be a super amazing is the machine learning that can learn to integrate chromatographic peaks, because chromatograph is words. Ooh, ads. Let's see. Which means I should have a sip of water, because we get too excited talking about these kind of cool things. But yeah, chromatograph. What is it with these words that you just read endlessly and then you struggle to pronounce them because you only ever read them? But chromatographic peaks and chromatography is used in so many things. Like, that is usually how you identify. You do a lot of blood tests with them, you do a lot of drug tests, you do a lot of, checking concentrations in blood can be done a lot of the time with various types of chromatography, and we have a lot of different instruments, and a lot of the data that comes out is, a noisy signal with a time stamp on the x-axis, which is the background noise, and then you'll get, after say 2 minutes, you'll get peak, where you get suddenly a lot of your chemical coming to the detector, and then there's noise again, and if it's a multivariate method, you will get more peaks coming out, and your job is to make sure the method is short, but still all of your chemicals are nicely separated, and they come one by one and not all at once, which, if you have never heard of chromatography before, is an awful explanation, and it's not going to leave you any the wiser, but it's a very popular technique with a lot of different applications, a lot of different instruments that uses the same, basic concept, especially in hospitals and stuff like that. There's usually a pretty decent, in bigger hospitals, chromatography lab. So if they could have some tools for helping them with analysis and double checking stuff. But I think there is stuff being developed and getting better, especially for routine analysis. So I guess for me doing research stuff is why there isn't tools for that yet, because you're doing new stuff all the time, so the machine has to learn new stuff all the time, whereas for drug testing and machine routine analysis, I'm pretty sure that is already a thing. I would be very surprised if not. It's one of the reasons I've always wanted to work in a hospital, because it's a very different way to use the instruments that I'm used to, which I find really cool. And all our engineers at the university who did chromatography maintenance were women, which was hilarious, because you'd get postdocs and PhD and professors from countries where that is less usual, and seeing the two women that I worked the most with, badass engineers, which in English I think is called a lab technician instead, but in Norway we call them engineers and senior engineers who work with the lab and the instruments, and just standing there with a spanner, you're repairing things, changing equipment, changing tools, changing parts. It's just, yes, this is showing people that women can do anything and repair things, and they were just so badass. So I admired them so much. So I never understood I met some researchers and PhDs and stuff who would scoff at engineers because they're just sort of the assistant to the researcher. They don't write the papers, but they facilitate the research, they analyze the samples, they maintain the instruments. They're so important. And I never understood why you would scoff at them. They're literally the people, a lot of the time, who run your samples and enable you to do the stuff that you do, and they know so much about the instruments they use and the maintenance they require, and just yes, every piece in the puzzle is important. Hey, are you coming back to us, madam? Oh, there is space for you. Hi. I always leave these chats wanting to Google so many fascinating things. I'm glad. That is a good response. I don't want people to feel depressed and hopeless and stuff, but wanting to learn more things is a good. I encourage this behavior. Still not a scratching post, madam? Good, good. So long as it's not a scratching post, I don't mind. Personally, I feel like the amount of surveillance being done with the good machine learning should be a top concern along with the environmental cost. Yes, so many people forget that because things are like online and we don't see the cost of things like emails and stuff. No, madam, you don't need to go inside the cupboard. That is not for you. Also, that is not where the snacks are hidden. But people forget how much energy the internet requires. Like, there was a study once about how much energy full inboxes require and the cost of archiving stuff rather than actually deleting stuff you're not going to read again. And the numbers are mind-boggling. And we forget it because it's abstract, it's in the cloud, right? It's digital, it doesn't feel real in the same way that a car feels real or a sweater feels real or a factory feels real. It's sort of nebulous, and that has always been the problem with, or like one of the issues with the internet and the online and things like crypto, is that people only think about it in the abstract, in the cloud, online, but there's always a physical aspect to it. Like, the internet is run by servers in server rooms using electricity day and night to run, and there is a definite, I'm sure, I know it exists for emails, but it probably exists for larger parts of the internet too, like how much electricity the internet and our online social media platforms and all of that different stuff consumes, which is at the same time both terrifying and deeply fascinating. Which I feel like a lot of the things that I research and learn about is that it's that sort of uncanny valley of both mortifying, but also I enjoy learning about things, so I'm fascinating, but also, whew, this is rough. Sounds like a catch-22? Like, remind me what that means again. But it is, I'm assuming it's like you can't have one without the other, like a negative with a positive that always follows an invention, which is very much the truth. My needle case is done. Thanks so much for keeping me company. Congratulations on finishing the thing. That was very quick. That is super, super cool. And now you have it and you can bring it with you everywhere and bring your projects with you. Yes, you love to see it. Let's see. What is chromatographic photography? Am I spelling that right? I'm googling and getting results that don't seem to match. Let's see. What you're looking for is chromatography. Let's see. There you go. That's the word. Ah, yeah. Lynn is also spelling it out. It's to do with it. It comes from the Latin of color for chroma and graphy to write, because it started out with people putting liquids, and it's an old experiment where you take a marker of some kind and you mark a piece of paper and you dip the very bottom below the marker in water or a different solvent, something that works, but for children's experiments you usually start with water because it's not dangerous, and you will notice that the dot will start spreading upwards as the water is spreading upwards on the paper. That's where it all started. And as it does so, as the marker dot, which is usually a black marker, for instance, would contain many different dyes, as the different dyes travel up on the paper, they are also separating into those different dyes, again, into the different colors and the different chemicals, the different components, because different molecules will be heavier or lighter. For some applications, it's about which ones are more polar or less polar. We have a lot of different ways to manipulate the physical, the environmental conditions that we put. So, for instance, if I was working with in my lab developing methods for stuff, I have methods where I want to analyze, say, 10 different chemicals in a sample. So I will have a little vial and I will put a certain amount of each chemical inside, all 10 of them, and usually some references too, but let's just keep it 10 for now. In a vial, dissolved in a solvent. I was using liquid chromatography, which is, so I would use the liquid that I was talking about. So you have that liquid, and you have what we call a solid phase, which in my case was this like long straight metal tube that we call a column, and it's filled with these little beads, almost like sand. And these beads have different chemical properties. So for instance, we've talked about acids and bases before, or alkali, which is a lot of people know what they are. So you could manipulate a column, or you could buy a column that is pH sensitive, for instance. And then when I load my sample, if I then have a sample and my 10 samples all have different, well, they would be pKa's, but like different, pHs, sort of, like one would be acidic 2 and one would be 7, some would be 8, they would line up differently on the scale just for illustrative purposes, but they're all mixed in the vial, like a soil test. Exactly, Brooke. It's like when you take a sample in the environment, you don't have the chemicals one by one and you can just run them in your instrument. You have a mix. And that is the challenge with environmental analysis, is that everything is in a mix, so you need to separate them somehow in order to actually be able to analyze them. Otherwise, you're just going to get one big signal in your detector and it's going to be all the chemicals at once and you learn nothing additional. So we have a sample and we need to separate it, so we will load it onto the column, as you would say, and there would be a liquid, and the liquid would run through that column that is sensitive to different pHs. So some of them it would hold on tighter to, would prefer, and some would just be flushed straight through. Like imagine a magnet, and some things just get stuck on the magnet and some things are repulsed by the magnet, and then you have like a scale, sliding scale, all the steps in between. So whatever is repulsed by the magnet or the column will just go straight through the column, straight away, will come out as fast as the liquid is going, and you will get a peak. And then everything else will come one after the other, and you tweak the controls until you find a method that works for your samples, for the conditions that you are working with, this was what I worked with. I would I would twiddle the knobs and try different columns and different solvents and different conditions to find the optimal conditions where I would get all my chemicals would come out in a neat row, one by one by one by one by one, but not so slowly that there's a lot of time between each one, because that feels more like a waste of time, as I talked about earlier with in our lab, or in the instrument lab that we collaborated with. They are charged by the hour. We are not charged by sample. So if you can have really fast samples, you get tons of data for much less money, which budgets are always a thing. So we would do that. So you would load your sample at one end and you would tweak the knobs and have the conditions, and then they would come out at the other end one at a time. And then they would go into the detector and give you a peak, that signal, which is super cool. Playing with these instruments is super cool. And I talk to other scientific people. We can always commiserate about this kind of thing. You know, we can always talk about and identify. Like, I have a friend in the UK who is a microscopist. Yeah. And even though our preferred instruments are not exactly the same, it's still that, like, yes, it's so much fun to play with instruments, make them sing. You know, you're working with instruments that are like $1 million, which is terrifying. Some of them, it's so cool. And then the engineers, because the engineers are stable. As a PhD, you know, I'm going to finish what I'm working on and then I'm going to go on to my next project and leave the university. But in a lot of universities, the knowledge of how to run the instruments is carried by the postdocs and the PhD, which can be fragile if a lot leave at once and you don't have someone who has the knowledge. So a lot of the time, the engineers are the knowledge keepers of how to maintain and take care of the instruments. And we would have training sessions with our engineer, and, you know, she was always on, you know, call, like, because these instruments are expensive, so they're always like, call us before you try to fix anything. I would rather you call me 10 times than do something wrong with the instrument, because they're expensive. But then as you're paying attention and you're talking to them and you're learning things, you learn more and more about how you can fix things on your own, and they will trust you to fix certain things on your own. And cleaning certain parts of the instrument on your own, they will be, you know, confident that you're able to do it and can take care of it. And that gradual learning of things is so satisfying. And honestly, I don't think I've talked about this before, but that was one of the things that felt like there was a frustration or a grief about finishing the PhD, because in the beginning everything was hard. I didn't know the unwritten rules, I didn't know the expectations, I didn't, like, yeah, I'm a PhD student, but what does that mean? What am I expected to do, and in what way, and how independent, and how dependent on your supervisor, and how, like, all of these rules. And it was very difficult in the beginning. I was not very good at it. Like, I was struggling, and my supervisor could see I was struggling, and it was a bit like, come on, let's figure this out. I had a very good supervisor, like, very good fit for me. We had a little bit of a hiccups in the beginning, but as we figured out how to communicate, it got better. But it was so frustrating, because when I finally started to feel like I mastered the job, I mastered the expectations, I mastered the instruments, and then I finished. That was kind of hard. And I was scared of applying for postdocs because I was worried that that would be a second level up and then things would be super hard again. But then I've talked to other people who have told me that actually the postdoc in the same research group was actually the easy part, because by then you knew everything, which I wish I'd known that, because then I might have applied for a postdoc with my supervisor. But I was scared and burnt out at the time and I didn't. But that always, like, I had spent 4 years, almost 5, at this place, and I was finally getting good at it, getting familiar with it, and then you defend your thesis and you're gone. So much for that mastery. There is also a similar technique that you use to separate and identify DNA fragments in a sample. You load the DNA on a gel and run an electric current through. Yes, electrophoresis. We did that in Genetics 101. So cool. Even though they're like, don't touch the imaging machine because the dye they used is carcinogenic, and it has big warning signs on it that says do not use for anything other than this, which is mildly terrifying, but also very cool. And we are about to have ads again, but I do love it when we geek out over science, although I feel like it's a narrow pool of people that we have that have both the craft and the science enthusiasm, but I think it's bigger than we think. It does seem that way from the responses I see, but I hope people are not intimidated. and then different fragments will be pulled by the current at different speeds, and you can identify them. Yeah, and it's so cool. And because gel electrophoresis is so physical, I love the fact that, I mean, you can't do this in liquid chromatography. I can't just, well, no, that's not correct. I couldn't do it with my instruments because my instruments were made for analytical chemistry, but I have seen liquid chromatography instruments made for organic chemists where they will load their sample and they will develop a method. And because what I was going to say before I went off on a tangent is that it's so cool that gel electrophoresis is so physical, so you can actually cut out the DNA fragment of interest to you and like physically pull that out and dissolve that in a vial and analyze that further, which is so cool. And before I said the wrong thing, actually we do have something similar in liquid chromatography where I had really tiny columns, like they would be 15-20 centimeters long, like quite small, and they would be quite like a few millimeters, like, am I remembering wrong when I say they were like 0.4 to 0.6 millimeters wide? Internal diameter? I think they were something like that. I could pull up the methods if I wanted to, but they are quite small. They're quite thin, the ones I was using. Whereas for organic chemistry, when they have a compound that they've synthesized and they want to remove the contaminants, they would buy a really fat, thick column, like a really big one, and they would have their vial with the concentration and the contaminants, and they would load it through. And then at the other end, they would have a waste vial and a product vial. And they would develop a method where they knew that, say, for 10 minutes, all I get is contaminants, and then at minute 10 to 12, I will get my products. I will swap the trash vial for the product vial, and after 12 minutes, I'm getting contaminants again, so I will take my product vial and put the waste vial back on, and then I will have my product clean as a cleaning method, which is super cool. Same application, like same basic function, but just a different application. It's got to be hard to suddenly be cut off from the equipment you need to engage with your interest. It is. That's what I miss the most, is the instruments. Playing with the expensive instruments is a special kind of fun. It's very satisfying when you finally make them sing and do exactly what you want. It's like, yes. Yeah, when you work with DNA and RNA, everything you use comes with a lot of warning labels. Yeah. I once had, again, we were collaborating with biology, and they wanted a method to analyze hormones. So we were like, yeah, we can develop that, totally. And the head researcher that the person we collaborated the most with, came up to me with this tiny cardboard box with like 15, 20, I would like to say, tiny 1 milliliter vials with different hormones at, concentrations. And with vials, they're interesting. Like, you have ampoules, because then nothing evaporates and nothing gets lost. And you have to, you either have a tool or you have to crack it physically. We didn't have the tool yet, because again, I was in a unique situation where we actually developed the research group as I was working with the supervisor, because we didn't have anything. So we didn't have an ampoule breaker, so I had to break them physically with my hands, which is terrifying because they're glass. And the head researcher handed me this box of hormones for us to develop a method for them, and they were like, don't stab yourself or you will die, because hormones are generally in very low concentration in our body, so being introduced to any of those at a suddenly, super high concentration is going to wreak total havoc in your body, which is, an interesting, humbling thing to have just in your hands. But that is the case for a lot of things. And I would always, because with higher education comes higher responsibilities. I would never let any of my master students, my master students, you get they're mine. I'm training them, I'm teaching them, I'm analyzing their samples, I'm showing them the lab and teaching them how to be safe in the lab. I would never let them break any ampoules on their own. I would always break all the ampoules for their work myself, and then transfer them into vials for the freezer, so that because if anything is going to happen, it's going to be to you. You know, you don't want your precious students to have that. That would be terrible. That would be absolutely awful. But I would 100% stab myself. Yeah, I was always nervous. It's the worst the first time. The first time is the worst, the first couple of times. And then you get used to it, like, because it does have, if you've ever seen a chemical liquid ampoule, they use them for medicine as well, so a lot of people might have insulin in them, I'm guessing, possibly. Because it can travel and it can stay at a set concentration, because if something is diluted or dissolved in a chemical that will, you know, evaporate into the air, and most of them do. We have good caps, but they're never 100% airtight unless it's an ampoule that is literally glass, just covered all the way around it, so there's nowhere for the solvent to go. So it'll stay that exact concentration for years and years and years and be shelf stable. Most of them will. Some chemicals break down, but they will stay stable. The amount of liquid will stay the same, so they're very good for chemical companies, reference companies, to send to researchers, because you know that what it says on the ampoule is the right concentration. But it does have a little etched circle around it, so when you do push on it, it doesn't take a lot of force. It's probably sounds scarier than it really is, but you do get little plastic thingies where you can place the ampoule inside and you can pull a lever and it'll break for you. But they do try to make it as safe as they can by putting a pre-etched ridge around the edge, so that is usually where it breaks most of the time. That is where it's gonna snap off. But the first time I was quite nervous. Hadn't done it before, but that's a lot of the stuff that you do as a PhD, I feel, is doing stuff you haven't done before and hoping it all works out. And like any job, no one really knows what they're doing, but you're doing your best. I would love to see some videos of the process of separating and multiplying DNA fragments. Would love to know more about that. I don't have education in science, but I'm fascinated by DNA. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff with DNA and the different methods and how they work and how they actually get the results. Like when people were talking about PCR and the COVID tests, I was like, oh yeah, you've done it in this way to isolate the different strands, and that is super cool. To just recognize your methods that you've learned in university in the wild, in the flesh, in reality. It's always been really cool to me to see it being used, not just for research, but for real life applications too. I think it is always fascinating to listen to someone who is passionate and knowledgeable about their subject. That is good, because when I'm just rambling to myself and I don't have I can't see you, so I don't have a class of students, so I can see where people get confused, I will just ramble on, and then I'm thinking, oh, I can't talk, because I could talk for hours about this, but I don't feel like that would be necessarily appropriate. And then you try to make shortcuts and you leave everyone more confused than you found them. And again, it's that thing where if you know something so intimately, it can be difficult to remember how it was when you were a student and you hadn't heard about any of this. To try to put yourself back in that learner's mind and the questions that you had, and the different ways people learn and the different ways people understand. And I don't know, sometimes I'm wondering if I should try to set up some sort of, because I have a little old bamboo tablet that is 15, 20 years old, and it would be cool if I could manage to do an overlay on the stream of some kind. I don't think that is possible, at least not with the tools that I have, where I could draw examples, because me just showing things with my hands is not really super illustrative, is it? And I don't want to do a stream where I'm a little person in the corner and then you see my computer screen, because that isn't very engaging. It's mostly just the stream data and the chat. But if I could do occasionally, like, try to illustrate things, like up on the white wall here, right there, that would be useful. But I don't think, because you would have to have like transparency by default, and then you would have to take the input from the drawing tablet and create the color. It sounds possible, but I'm not sure where I would even start looking for technology like that. Speaking of interest in craft and science, I was at university for quality control for fabrics and apparel for my love of fashion history and chemistry. But then I started my family and stayed home. Yeah, that can happen. When I first applied, because the university that I took my PhD in, the chemistry institute will sometimes just put out an application for projects for PhDs, and you can find a professor and you just write a project proposal for what you're going to do with the professor, and then along with the job application you submit that project proposal, and that is what we did. And initially I wanted to do historical chromatography, which is where you take, you know, small amounts of pigments from paintings or ceramics or glazes or textiles, and you analyze those chromatographically. So historical chemistry, and I was super enthused. I found this professor when I was doing my master's, but I found her a little bit too late, so I didn't do a master's project with her. So I thought when I saw the applications for PhD, that could be a cool thing for us to do together, because I mean, it's always been like history and the environment. Like I enjoy both. I find both to be cool. So I emailed her, and it was actually really sad because I emailed her and like asked about it, and she said that I shouldn't write a project proposal with her because you wouldn't get the job, because her research didn't fit in with the university's goal for more, you know, oceanic or environmental research. So she forwarded me to the supervisor that I actually did end up working with, that had really only just been hired, and then got emailed by this complete stranger asking if we could write a project proposal in a day, and he was like, yeah, sure. And he did, and then I applied for the job and we managed to get it. But that was always really sad to me. Imagine working as a professor in a field where you're like, yeah, no, the institute doesn't care about my research, so you're not going to get this job if you apply with me, which made me really sad for her. But that was one of the things that I wanted to do. So again, history and textiles, and whenever I see like textile conservationists, there is an education for that in Denmark. There is none in Norway, but there is one in Denmark. And I always thought it looks so cool, because that is also, you know, you use your knowledge of chemistry and solvents and different things reacting with other things to conserve historical textiles in a museum. And there actually was a job for this in Norway that is out now, but I can't apply for it because I don't have that certification, because again, it's only in Denmark, and that is not the chemistry education that I have. But textile textile conservation is super cool field that is super specific and super fascinating. It's definitely something I want to learn more about, and again, in that sweet spot that we talked about science and history both in the same spot. Super cool. Bring out an actual whiteboard. I suppose I could do that, find a chalkboard. Someone else suggested a blackboard or something, which would fit in the style of corner. That might not be a bad idea. Maybe I should look into that if we can find some of that. You could get the squeaking of the blackboard or whiteboard as a background thing to keep us entertained. Oh, come on. You don't like thread that will unravel more and more as you use it, so you need to like keep snipping off ends to get it through your needle. Blech. Personally, I find your hand gesture explanations sufficient to understand what you're talking about, but I also have a background in science and engineering myself. Yeah, I think that would make it a little bit easier to talk about things, but I do get enthusiastic with the hand gestures because I want everyone to understand why this is super cool, and why we all want to be doing different things in these cool fields. It's always that way when you have something you're enthusiastic about, isn't it? You know, everyone should understand how cool and fun and amazing whatever this thing that you're doing is. Yeah, it's a good idea about the whiteboard. I could just hang it on the wall. I could, I suppose. I don't want to hang too much stuff on these walls because the landlord is super nice, so I don't want to make too many holes for him to repair, but we could probably find some sort of solution, couldn't we? Even if it's just a tiny handheld whiteboard and I'm trying to draw with it as things go. Good morning. You are being very back and forth today, madam. Very cute. Can you imagine the cats with the chalk though? I could. Soot will chew on anything that is pencil shaped, so that should definitely go in a box and be hidden away in between use. That does sound sad, but at least she was transparent with you, so you could get in with another person. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, I owe her my entire PhD because she was so transparent and she was so honest. But then, not only was she transparent and honest, but she was kind enough to then forward me to a person who was both willing and had the capacity and was within what the university wanted to focus on. And actually, I've talked about this before, but I've usually been second place when I do interviews because I mask decently but not well enough, so they will be like, yeah, she was nice enough but she was a little bit off, you know, is often the phrasing that I've encountered, and then they will hire someone else, and that did happen to me in this instance as well. But the difference was that although another person was hired as the first candidate, they did tell me that they actually wanted to hire me as well. So because my professor had just been hired at the university, they had... Yeah, I know snacks are in that drawer, but they're not for you right now, especially when you're trying to break in. But my professor had just been hired, so they had what they call a start package, which was a certain amount of funds in addition to their wages that were going to setting up their lab, getting chemicals, and hiring one PhD. So, madam. So what they did was, they went to my supervisor, who had written the proposal with, and they said, we interviewed this person, we like them, but we like someone else more, but we will hire her for you if you are willing to fund her through your own start package, like through your own funding. And he said yes, which also was very generous of him. So very lucky in both those aspects. And this is not something that I learned until I'd been at my PhD for a couple of years, and you start to hear things in the hallways and you hear the gossip and the different, you know, the different occasions, and that's not the word I'm looking for, randomness that made something happen in the first place. And ads again. But in Norwegian we would call it tilfeldigheter, which is like, yeah, randomness, but I can't remember the English word for the life of me. Random chance, happenstance. Words. I volunteer to clap the chalk erasers. That's excellent. It's always something we need. Apropos conservation, do you happen to know the state of the conservation of the Oseberg ship? Last I heard it was falling apart. Yes and no. Like, yes, it is falling apart, and I mean, the sad thing for me is the textiles, which a lot of them we only have for we only have the sketches of the artist that was in the field with them, because when they pulled out the tapestries, they almost immediately started deteriorating and crumbled to dust. So I have a book that is from the Marianne Wedler, I think, who is a historian working with the Oseberg ship a lot and doing other historical. Madam, your bum still needs to be on my lap. I made a book about the tapestries, which is really good and has really good pictures, but I can't show you because the Vikings did have... they did use a symbol that has been appropriated by certain hateful people, so I'm not going to show that on stream in any way, shape or form, but we only have the sketches, which makes me really sad. There is no physical evidence because they all crumbled, and they are better at preserving what is left now, but a lot of it is in boxes and at the university and being taken care of. I think the wood is in better conditions than the textiles because they had more experience conserving that kind of thing, and also the the metals, but the textiles are in super poor condition. I'm not sure about the ship, but a lot of the ships are falling apart in some way, shape or form. And that has actually been, they have a full-time person who is hired by the Viking Museum specifically to look at, because they are redecorating, they are rebuilding, upgrading, fixing, changing, redesigning the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo, where a lot of these things are held as we speak. So it's a building site. It doesn't open. Maybe it will open in 2025 if they are according to time. Maybe they won't. But currently it's a building site. It's not open to the public. But building things usually cause a lot of vibrations and noise, but the vibrations are the main part. So they have a full-time, I don't know if they were called the Viking ship minder or they had some other title, but it was basically he keeps track of the Viking ships that have been sort of restored and look like a ship and not just pieces of wood, and make adjustments or call the builders or, you know, babysit the Viking ships basically, so that the vibrations of constructing the new state or the new place for these Viking ships to live, the new museum, is not gonna destroy the Viking ships in the process, which that would be super awful, that like if in the process of building them a new house to show them off to the world, they would break. So his job is basically to babysit Viking ships to make sure that they are not destroyed, which is so cool. And it's so good that they recognize the need for that kind of job. You're still restless, are you? But a lot of these ships are sadly falling apart. They are old, and I remember that was talked about with the Swedish large settlement in Swedish, Birka. That Birka as well. Birka has a lot of stuff still in the ground that we haven't dug up, and part of the reason for that is that we know that we are flawed humans with limited technology, and even though we are as far in technology as we have been, as far as we know in the timeline at the moment, there still could be significant advancements in conservation technology 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. So they have gone with scanners, metal detectors and that kind of things, and try to map what is in the ground, and there is still a lot of stuff there. They've taken up some of the stuff, but there's still a significant amount of stuff left there, and they're leaving it on purpose because 50 years from now our technology is going to be so much better. So we're going to wait with analyzing them and taking them up until we can take better care of them, which, yeah, I am looking forward to what we're going to figure out in the years to come. It's going to be really cool. Just like, you know, the talk about how we assumed that a lot of plant fiber material was linen, because that was our expectation, that was what we thought they had, and it's difficult to distinguish plant fibers once they've been spun into thread. So without more advanced tools, it was basically all you could do to be like, this is wool and this is plant fiber, and we're assuming it's linen. Whereas now that we actually have better tools and we could go and reanalyze a lot of these samples, it turns out that there was about equal proportions, depending a bit on where you are geographically and what sort of resources are available locally, but it seems like there is about an equal distribution of, there's linen, which of course comes from the flax plant, and variations of hemp and nettle. And hemp and nettle are not, you know, edge cases, that is only in a few cases if you can't access anything else. They were used side by side, or instead of, or, you know, of linen, and I find that really cool. And then you also have stories even further north, you know, again, you're talking about Arctic conditions, where it could be difficult to get a whole season long enough to grow even flax or nettle or hemp. So it's theorizing, we haven't found any plant fibers yet for those areas, that because they were so good at separating a fleece into, you know, the coarsest wool and the finest wool with a lot of different qualities in between, that instead of having a plant fiber underlayer and a wool overlayer, if they couldn't access plant fibers in the first place but had a larger amount of wool, that they actually would have a soft underdress or underclothes of wool and then a second layer of wool on top of that. So you would spin the softer wool to be closer to the skin and the coarser wool to be the layer outside of it. That is at least a running theory, just because we haven't yet found evidence of plant fiber everywhere. So that there is a running theory that maybe they didn't have access to it, which I find really fascinating. But like all things, it's a theory, because like we always try to wheedle into people's brains when we're doing reenactment of food from medieval times and other things, is that and a lot of archaeology really is that the lack of evidence is not an evidence of lack, which is, you know, correlation does not always equal causation. It's a variant of that just because A does not mean B. So it's always like, how can we figure this out when there is so little data to go on? But that is part of what makes it interesting, isn't it? I couldn't imagine the process they used to make nettle into yarn. I know, right? It's actually, I mean, here could be a really good setting to try that, because there is a river downstream, like down the hill here, where I could potentially place a bundle of nettle for retting, but I don't know where to start. I don't have heckles, I don't have tools to do more than that. I'm like, how does one even? I'm sure that I could probably find information with Sally Pointer or others, that would be super cool. But yeah, exactly. Sally Pointer, yeah, here on YouTube plays with nettle on our channel. Yeah, she is super good. I love her content. It's a super knowledgeable, super detailed, just excellent all around. Like, absolutely check her out if you haven't already. Does a lot of good reenactment and information, like public interactions and education, and really cool stuff. Why am I getting so sleepy? Oh, because we have been going for almost 3 hours. That wasn't supposed to happen. Oh no, not. That is typical, isn't it? Oop. But I think we're gonna wrap up so that I can go brush my teeth and go to bed, because I am getting tired. Yeah, you love Sally Pointer? Yeah, he's amazing. Absolutely recommend. But I think I'm gonna finish this up another day, and we are gonna call it for today. I'm not sure if I'm gonna manage to do a live stream on Sunday as well. Might have to cancel, might have to postpone. We shall see. Things are going on in many which ways. But anyway, this was really nice, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, rest of your week, whatever that looks like for you, and do some body doubling or just chill out together and have a good time. Just have a little bit of a break. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you suddenly. If you're new here, the Discord in the pinned comments will let you know when we're planning to do a live, migraines notwithstanding, where I try to do lives with a little bit more warning than here on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, go check that out, and check out the cool community that is very supportive and nice. And yeah, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.